I didn't start instantly enough. Oh my gosh, welcome to the spotlight, everybody. Peter and I have been talking for about 5 minutes with Doug Drexler, who is an absolutely iconic creator in the worlds of Star Trek, which is very near and
Cra-
dear to our hearts, and
Crazy.
uh, and going back to Dick Tracy, which is a great movie I've not seen in a long time, but I was blown away by
That was
it.
the culmination of my makeup career.
Yes, and then and also Battlestar Galactica. We're also doing dress up. I hope you're watching us on either the Patreon video or on our YouTube channel. These
Well,
guys have got me outnumbered. I'm in my Battlestar, they're in their Star Trek, but I'll take it. Doug Drexler, hello.
hello, everybody.
Great to
Well,
meet you.
if you're here, it means you've got nothing better to do if you're listening to us
I
talking.
don't have anything better
I
to
like
do
your
than
old
be here,
style
but
Captain America shield back there.
oh my gosh, yes, that's actually a tin one, actually. I have the more traditional, but that's yeah, I had the whole outfit. I used to be a pretty serious customer a couple of years back, but now I do this because I love talking to guys like you. But uh Doug, thank you for being here. This is amazing. Tell me how you got your start. How did you get started doing all this?
Well, I mean, even when I was a little kid, I was reading science fiction. I mean, you start with comic books, obviously, but by the time Star Trek, I mean, I guess I was 12 or 13 when it premiered. And back then, I mean, now there's so much stuff out there and streaming, and you have no idea there's just actually there's way too much because your focus is so spread out. But back then, there were three networks,
Right.
and they used to, um, their time of the year was the fall. They would have the fall season where all three networks premiered all their new shows the very same week. It was exciting, and they
Yeah.
would whip you up for a couple of months before. I mean, in August, it really was, a lot of advertising, and there was print ads for the shows on NBC and some really cool drawings when drawings were being done by humans. And there was a part of it was for Star Trek, and you caught a glimpse of the ship and Kirk and Spock, and they were paintings. But the minute that ship was just like nothing else. I mean, everyone had been doing, cigar-shaped rockets and flying saucers. Although
Mhm.
Enterprise is a flying
They
saucer,
put them together.
they put them together. That was the interesting thing. It was like Matt Jeffries took a bunch of sci-fi tropes and rearranged them in a way that was like nothing else before.
True.
So it's like brilliant. It's totally brilliant. It's a brilliant design. I mean, science fiction designs can look pretty goofy pretty fast, but Star Trek Enterprise, which was really the basic design, we're talking like 1964.
Right.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Right.
So it's kind of supernatural.
Cool.
Absolutely.
I love that show
Cool.
too.
And then you were a
It's great.
super fan, and then
Oh yeah. So I wasn't allowed to watch TV at the time during the week. My parents
right.
wouldn't let me watch television, and I saw the print ads, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is." And basically, my mother just took a shower, so I knew she couldn't catch me. So I ran downstairs and turned on the TV at like Thursday night at 7:30, was it? And back then, you had to let the TV set warm up, you
Yeah.
know. And they were like, if you pulled the back off a television set on the back, it was all filled with these like glass bubbles,
Right.
all these filaments that were glowing orange. It would look like a science fiction forest. It was amazing. But when the tube finally projected or created the image, it created static electricity. I mean, you could literally feel it on your skin.
Mhm.
And I watched maybe about 10 minutes, and then I heard my mother turning the water off, and just like, pencils down, and run away and hide. And I basically went on strike for 1 hour of TV a week. And they gave in, no, we don't know why they gave in. Maybe it was just, I was so adorable, I couldn't resist, or just a pain in the ass and they were trying to shut me up. I have no idea. But as a kid who read a lot of science fiction, Star Trek was, of course, Twilight Zone was amazing, and The Outer Limits was also really good. But as far as this type of thing, it still was treated like kid stuff back
Yeah.
then. I mean, they wouldn't have done Batman as a TV series unless it was silly because
Right.
they're kids. Now it's like really serious and gritty,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
But Star Trek was a whole other thing. There was nothing else like it, and I was totally, totally smitten. But the thing was that when they tried to cancel it in the second season, and Vito Trimble got all the fans irate and writing letters, and I was really, involved in that. And I had a lot of kids writing letters to NBC, and I sent a letter to New York Newsday, uh, explaining who we were. I'm sure I sounded really hilarious to them. This kid who's like explaining why Star Trek is so important. And I was in class. I guess it was. I can't even remember what grade I was in. All I know is that I get called to the principal's office in the class from the class over the intercom, and that's where everyone laughs because they figure you're in trouble. And I
Yeah.
had trouble for like drawing on my desk. And when I got down to the principal's office, they were all like smiles in there. I'm like, what's going on here? And Harvey Aronson wrote an article that was like a quarter of a page about this group isn't way out, but its causes, and it's all about me. Well, he wants to write the article. That's it. He's called the school to interview me. So I
Wow.
Oh my
interviewed
gosh.
me. I was like a celebrity in the principal's office, and I could see the principal and vice principal in the next room listening in.
You're like, hold my calls.
Yeah. Uh, so about a week later, the article came out, and I was a geeky kid who couldn't hit a ball, couldn't catch a ball, couldn't figure out how to do sports. Read science fiction, was a weirdo. And that day that the article came out, every class I went to, the teacher pulled the article out of his pocket and read it to the class. And after that, I was like a celebrity.
Oh my gosh.
And it
I
also,
love it. You were the first cool geek because now, people like I grew up in the 90s, right? And I read comics and loved Star Trek, and that wasn't cool. Now kids in schools today, that's what everybody does. So that's the norm instead of being the outcast.
I got to say, look, I have to say it kind of takes away from it a little bit. It used to be this forbidden thing that you couldn't even let people know you did
Right.
because you'd be ostracized.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Nuts.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's
Oh
so
my God. This is crazy. Peter's got a question.
Um,
Hold on a second. Beaky, you want to come here? Come on down.
Uh-oh. It was funny the way he turned. Oh, there we go.
oh, cool.
If I'm like doing something like this, he has to be here.
Oh my God,
And
it's like
we
my
will,
dog.
whimper till I get down.
If you're not watching on YouTube, there is the most beautiful parrot. I'm assuming it's parrot.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have bird blindness like that guy on Peacemaker. No, I'm just kidding.
he's my eagling.
Oh, he's your.
I've
You should
had
be
this
watching on
bird-
YouTube if you're not
I've had,
watching.
I've had this bird 43 years.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh, I had no
Can you
idea they
believe
lived that long. That's
Oh, yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
he
live a
could be
long
60 or 70 possibly.
Oh, that's wild. That's
So
wild.
time.
he's got to be on here with me.
He
Right.
knows there's a
Co-star.
camera, must be seen.
Hello, look at that. He's made himself a star. Oh, all right, Peter, shoot.
All right.
Oh, yes.
So
You had a question, didn't you?
I did. So you got to do what any fan really dreams of doing, which was moving from one who just kind of sees it on the screen to then being involved and actively working on it.
It's insane.
How was that? Like just the the transition part and it like
Well, I mean, like now when I look back, I could see how it was this is where it was going. At the time, I didn't even know the whole idea of there being another Star Trek series was absurd, And then the movies did well. The first movie was, problematic in some ways. And when they decided they were going to do a TV series, which was cool, what made it amazing to me was that Gene Roddenberry was going to be in charge and Robert H. Justman was going to be there. I grew up on them in like the making of Star Trek, and I was at the very first Star Trek conventions. I think the first convention, I think it was '72 in
Yeah,
New
so
York
I've heard.
City across from Penn Station at the
Hmm.
hotel there. And they only expected a few hundred people. I think like 3,000 people showed up.
Yeah.
You
Oh my
want to
God.
go over there now? Huh? You here? No, okay. I can tell what he wants to do. He's like a divining rod. If I turn this way and he wants to go that way, the head spins around.
Reminds me
And
of
I
my
know to
dog.
go
It's
that way.
exactly the same.
He's my boss. I have no choice. Oh, I'll never get him off me. I'm so excited by this, aren't you?
That's fantastic.
This is our first pet interview too. I don't think we've had one on.
So I mean, but I was always involved. We opened a store in Manhattan, in New York City, called the Federation Trading Post. It
Oh
was a
yeah.
Star Trek store when there was no product.
Oh,
Well, the only
okay.
thing there was, some of the Mego things and the AMT kit and the blueprints, the tech manual, but everything else. I mean, we had posters and uniforms, and we made all that stuff. There was a cottage.
The
Yeah,
beloved tech
it was
manual.
a huge hit. I mean, when I first heard about the blueprints, the Franz Josef blueprints, it was at a time where you had to go to a store to get them. And I heard about it on a Sunday, no internet. I don't know how I found out. And I went to a local Walden's maybe or something, and it was closed. It was Sunday. A lot of stores used to close on Sunday. And in the window was that package of blueprints. I know I left drool on the glass. I hope they didn't take DNA off that. But yeah, so we had a store that was a big success. It wasn't at first, but we saved up our pennies and we got like a 15-second ad on one of the syndicated channels in New York,
Oh my gosh.
WPIX, I guess, during Star Trek.
Oh
And then
wow.
the next day there was a line down the block to get in
No,
there.
to buy it for the fact that you had no merchandise, you had lined down the block.
No, we had merchandise. We made it ourselves. We made
Wow.
posters. We made slide sets. We had a wall full of fanzines. Do you remember fanzines?
I do. I'm young enough to remember Starlog, or old enough to remember Starlog. That was my first, but
Well,
this was before that.
a fanzine where
Right.
fans were making their own magazines using mimeograph machines. Do you remember what a mimeograph machine was? Um,
That's a little before my time, but yes, I've heard of it.
but there was like really good fan fiction being done. And we used to have them in the store on consignment uh, from all over the country. And like, for instance, the uniforms. When John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd did their first Star Trek skit on Saturday Night Live, they came to us for everything
Oh
That's
because
really?
it was the
hilarious.
only place you could get stuff. And Paramount didn't care.
I was going to say, yeah, I can't believe you didn't get sued into oblivion.
They didn't care because it was a canceled TV show.
Right.
It's different now. It's huge. Star Trek is a huge tentpole. Back then it was like, don't we have something called Star Trek? Star Trek.
Star
You
Treks.
know. So we kind of did what Paramount licensing does today, where if someone's doing a product, they look at it and decide whether it's correct. Back then, Paramount didn't have that. So book companies and toy companies and stuff would come to us to review it.
Wow.
Well,
God, I
we
want
also
that
did
job.
the very, very first Star Trek magazine, mainstream magazine, predating Starlog. It was called the Star Trek Poster Book.
Poster book.
You could go on
Nice.
the internet and see them. I mean,
I feel
it
like
was
I've seen it.
it was the first Star Trek magazine, mass media.
That's
First,
awesome.
yeah. So we
That
did
is
that.
totally awesome. All right,
Yeah.
so I got to ask you. When I think of Doug Drexler, because I've seen you for years and all abouts, I always think about all of the accomplishments, TNG, DS9, Battlestar Galactica, which is one of my absolute favorites. I
Ah,
was a total idiot when I started researching this, not realizing that you won an Academy Award for doing makeup in Dick Tracy. I didn't know anything about that. And I'm chagrined. Um, and shame on me, your first makeup effect was in one of my very favorite TNG episodes, which is The Defector. You did Stewart. And was it King Richard? Or King
oh,
Lear?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely adore that episode, so I feel like an idiot, but, you can help me by telling me how does somebody go from being an award-winning makeup artist to being an incredible VXF special effects guy? P Tell me, please.
Well, I mean, really, Star Trek is what gave me the opportunity to move around. First of all, me getting on Star Trek was almost an impossibility because there was an East Coast makeup union and a West Coast makeup union.
Right.
And the West Coast makeup union really didn't look kindly on people coming from the East and taking jobs that the West Coast people should have. But what happened was that against all odds, and believe me, against all odds, we got Dick Tracy. Because remember what was going on with makeup back then before there was CG and stuff like that. Makeup was really, there was some huge makeup pictures, and the people who were at the top of the list were Rick Baker, Rob Bottin,
Mhm.
Greg Canham, and I started with Dick Smith, who was the makeup godfather, the greatest character makeup artist who ever lived, I think. I started with Dick, and when we were talking to the possibility of Dick Tracy, Dick Smith says, "Oh, chaps, you'll never get that. It'll go to one of the." So we went. We were in L.A. and Landau, not John Landis, John Landau, who was James Cameron's right-hand guy later on, Titanic and Avatar and stuff.
Yep.
We'd worked with him on a number of pictures, and so he was on Dick Tracy. And Milena Canonero, who was a costume designer for Cotton Club, who we knew, was on Dick Tracy. And Dick Silbert, who was an old, like an original gangster production designer, did the Cotton Club and was also a dyed-in-the-wool New Yorker. So the fact that we were from New York meant something to him too, And so I think that Warren had meetings with all the big shots. And he didn't particularly like them, I guess. I mean, the thing you have to remember is that on a Warren Beatty movie, there's only room for one diva, and that's Warren. So,
Right.
some of those makeup guys were kind of, I mean, if you're Rick Baker, I'm not saying Rick's not a nice guy or anything, but he's used to being treated like, Anyway, let's move on from there. So we got invited to. John Landau calls us and says, "Can you come have a meeting with Warren Beaky?" Hey, what do you want? Can I get rid of him? Hold on. Here, go up here. No. All right. How about over here? No. Okay, I failed at that.
You took him for a walk. Maybe that usually helps with my dog. Just, let him outside. Come back right back in.
So we had the meeting with Warren, and I remember that was an experience because it was like going to Eve's house in The Incredibles.
Yep.
Where
Yeah.
Mr. Incredible goes up to her house. It was just like that. And his assistant tells us to wait in the screening room. He's got a little cinema. And John and I were down there for about 45 minutes. And Warren comes down the stairs wearing nothing but a towel, wet from head to toe, sits down with water pooling underneath him and says, so what can we do? And we're like, well, what do you mean? You mean with the makeup or just the picture in general? And he goes, no, the movie. What can we do to make it better? And I don't think John has either been asked that by any producer. Oh, there's a couple who are really awesome in later years, but it was kind of mind-boggling. And he kind of like shook his head and listened to what we had to say. And then he said, can you write up a proposal? And then we left. And we wrote up a proposal and sent it to John Landau. And we were in Montreal working on a TV miniseries. And like 3:00 in the morning, John Landau calls and says, he called John, who was in a connected room, that we got it. And I just remember that door between our rooms got kicked open, with unbelievable force of blinding light, like, James Arness in The Thing. It says, we got it. It's like Ghostbusters where they get
That's
the first
exactly
phone,
what I was thinking.
And we were jumping on the bed like kids. I mean, it was impossible. And Dick Smith couldn't believe it that we got the job. And he says, oh, chaps, you may do the lab work, but you'll never lift. Here, come over here. Here, go ahead. You'll never lift a brush on stage, he says.
Jeez.
Yeah. And
So
Um,
much encouragement.
I know I was kind of surprised, but it's understandable, really. And he said, because Howard Schmidt was the head of the union, and he was a tough guy. He was known as being a real tough guy. And as a matter of fact, he was shot by a makeup artist after a union meeting, but the bullet died, not him. Uh, that's the kind of tough guy he was. And that what Dick really didn't count on was Warren Beatty's political pull.
Mm,
He strategically didn't decide whether the picture was going to be union or non-union. Of course, the union wanted it. And Warren said, well, I think I'm going to do it union. He goes, however, I need these two guys. And Howard Smith drove our applications out to the lab and like handed them to us. Like, it was crazy. So Dick Smith was like gobsmacked that we would get the job. I mean, I remember when I read about Dick Tracy in Variety, we had a lab in Brooklyn. And I just remember I told John, and we both looked at each other and says, well, whoever gets that job is winning an Academy Award because the potential for really cool makeup, it's like Wizard of Oz levels.
right, right.
Uh, and we worked with so many amazing actors because all the actors were doing favors for Warren. He called in favors from everyone. And I think a lot of them got scaled. I don't think they got it
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of money. You know, they did it because Warren, Dustin Hoffman, did it for scale. He didn't get a big paycheck.
Wow. That's crazy. And then Star Trek. So
Yeah.
that the door was open.
Well, it was just that, yes, that was it. Because, I mean, I even remember like before the first season of TNG, I visited Bob Justman. We became friends. And he understood the issues with an East Coast person, I didn't think it was a possibility that it could work out. But as soon as Dick Tracy was done, I literally went over to Paramount and begged Mike Westmore, please, 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 please let me work in Star Trek. Please let me work. And he's like, but you just did. Because Dick Tracy was like the biggest show in town at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The whole town was buzzing about it. And I begged Mike, and he was like, but why? You're doing features. And I'm like, no, Mike, you don't understand. It's always been about Star Trek. It's when Star Trek started, why I went in this direction. This is where I'm supposed to be. I
Yeah.
need to be here. And he just smiled and
Amen.
brought me on. I worked for like most of the time for 3 years, starting with the third season. And of course, that's where I met Mike Okuda on stage.
Yep.
He was like at the craft service table getting a cup of coffee, and I just remember assaulting him basically because I loved what he was doing. And when I came to work on the show, and there's a lot of time where you're waiting around to look at every square inch of those sets from an inch away, And I would look at those panels in engineering that went down the hall, the corridor, and say, "Oh my God, this guy has this. He's not doing science fiction here. He's doing speculative experimenting. What it might look like.
Yeah,
He's
speculative
not.
engineering. It's neat.
Too many people do science fiction. To me, that's always been the difference between Star Trek and other shows. Is that the science of it has always been, at least when we were there, really, really important. That every panel had to have a purpose,
Right.
that we talk it out, and it wasn't just putting a lot of crazy panels on something, and and the description there is, we got to be friends with Matt Jeffries. He was like our uncle, and we talked about this. And there's science fiction design on this hand. On this hand over here, which is where Matt Jeffries was operating, was aircraft logic.
Mm-hmm.
You don't treat it like science fiction. You don't just put a bunch of panels on it. I think the most figured out ship of all of them was probably the NX. Mike Okuda and I are very close. And I would sit in his, we see each other every day in and day out, sit in his office, talk about it, show him what I was doing, what it would be. It was really, really super thought out, every bit of it. It was kind of a project to try to seriously look at, well, what might a ship then with what we know now, what might it look like? And really think about it seriously. The beauty when we had Herman Zimmerman as a production designer who totally loved us and trusted us, you know, you could get it in an art department where you have someone who has to make all the decisions and be the boss, and and that that doesn't help the show,
No, not really.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, blather you away.
No,
Oh, you're good.
everything that we want to know, and I want to. Peter's got another question that I want to hear about. I want to hear about your project, so we'll wrap up, talk about your project. But Peter's got another absolutely great question. It's about the
Oh,
NX-01.
Peter,
Yeah, so it's a bit random. So you helped design it, but one of the things I was
I
seeing on
was
your
a lead
Facebook,
designer.
one of the things I was seeing on your Facebook page was that you had someone 3D printed a giant version for you.
Oh my
Have
God!
you found a spot for it, or is it just sitting dominating an entire area?
I got your season 5 right here. I love
Yeah,
this design.
that's the
I
great.
love the refit, and I knew they would because, well, first of all, to answer your question, it is in an area that my girlfriend says, "Well, you're going to move it from there, right?"
No, it stays there all the time.
So for a while, I'm going to leave it in a very obvious spot because I just love looking at it. The thing that it was the first enterprise that did not have a physical filming model.
Right.
And of course, I knew every bit of it in 3D space, but I'd never been able to walk around it and actually be. I mean, it makes me rethink a lot of the shots that they did for the
Yeah.
show. Although I always have to say that I thought the NX was way too dark.
Yeah.
Everything was in deep shadow. I kind of prefer the original series where they were trying to shoot shots that would work for any scene. The ship was kind of evenly lit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that at least a third of your shot should be lit like that so that people can really enjoy the ship.
Yep. All
When
of us Star Trek fans love looking at the starships, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, one great moment for me was that when Dave Blass wanted me and John Eaves together on Picard. We came in on season 2, but it wasn't until season 3 that we really did what Terry wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry had worked with us on back in the old days on the last group of shows, and he really admired all of us and respected. And when Dave Blass had contacted me through Facebook, and I thought he was just a fan, not to say just a fan, but a fan,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
working in a business. And we got, we hit it off like you always do when you meet someone who's a big fan of the show, because you have so many things in common, and it's kind of a shared childhood thing. It's crazy. But then one day he says, "I'm the new production designer on Picard," and I was like, that where you hear the phonograph needles.
Right. Needle scratch.
I'm like, what? And in all the years since Enterprise, it seemed like the new Star Trek was willing to do almost anything except bring us back. They didn't want us at all.
Mm-hmm.
And because they don't want to, they want to reinvent it.
Yep.
They always wanted to reinvent it, which I get it. But with Star Trek, it's real continuity is like one of the most beautiful things about Star Trek. And if you're a fan and you invest in books and blueprints and diagrams and you have the encyclopedia and you know when everything happened and why it happened, and then when they do a new group of shows, they throw it all away because they don't want to feel bound by what was happening before. But with Star Trek, that's a huge mistake. You're cutting the legs out from under one of the things that has made it so amazing over the years. Why would you do that? But you know what? If you're not a fan yourself, you don't understand that.
Yep.
I knew we were in trouble when I saw J.J. Abrams, and J.J., I've talked to him. He's a nice guy. He was not a Star Trek fan.
No.
Yeah.
Famously so.
Famously so.
And I saw him on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Yep.
And Jon Stewart is a huge Star Trek fan.
Oh, yes.
And he was so excited to have J.J. Abrams there, who's doing the next movie. And Jon Stewart's like this. Every word he says,
Exact face, too. You got it.
It was just exactly that. And he says, when I was a kid, I really didn't like Star Trek. He said, and I especially didn't like it when they got all philosophical. To me, that was like a knife in the heart. That's what I loved.
That's
I
what
love
the
it
show's
got
about.
philosophical.
Yep.
And so Jon Stewart goes, You know, I think I stopped hearing you when you said you like Star Trek.
Yeah, right.
I've seen that.
All after it's just white noise after that.
That should have been a clue to JJ at that moment that that's the wrong approach.
Yeah,
You know, I don't want to throw away my tech manuals. You know, I live
never.
On my shelf.
It's all
Yeah.
you know. This is Star Trek is it's a historic drama.
Hmm.
You don't if you're doing a story about Pearl Harbor, you don't give the Japanese F-15s because they look cooler. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Your audience appreciates the attention to detail and authenticity. You know, I looked through that thing. They made some mistakes in the back where all the ships were.
Hold on.
Don't take it out.
I'll look at it while you're talking.
Section in
Oh,
the
you're
back
right. Yeah. No,
was
yeah, the whole back part of it.
there. Margaret Clark, who's wonderful, was the editor, was rearranging the layout of it, and she grabbed everything in Illustrator and reduced it in size.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about Illustrator is that when you reduce something, you could tell it to scale the line weights or not. And she didn't have it scale the line weights. So all the line weights are way off. And I'm always embarrassed to look at the back. But I did like 4 pages of fold
Little
out
tiny version.
in the back that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
And Rick had been doing blueprints like he did for the Enterprise D.
You mean like this?
Yeah.
So,
Rick,
I'm sorry. If you are not watching us on video, we're going through the Deep Space Nine Tech Manual, which is, yes, we're, oh, we could go on forever.
yeah, I mean, Rick had somebody who was they were going to do blueprints kind of like the ones for Enterprise D, which I thought was a boring idea.
I have at least one of those sheets framed somewhere in the house. I love that book.
With the Enterprise, it's more interesting, but Deep Space Nine, you want to have like 12 sheets of U-Haul space.
Yeah.
You know,
there's a lot of hallways. It's mostly hallways.
So the person who was assisting him did not come through. And now it was falling on me. And Margaret Clark says, well, what can you do? And I said, well, I think I could do like 4 pages that would fold out, but I don't want them separate. Like in the Enterprise D blueprints, it's all separate.
Right.
You end up losing pages. They don't go back. You can't smuggle it into school.
They're a little thin too. If you fold them the wrong way, they pop in the middle. That's the problem.
But the thing was, I always kept in mind something I saw in Mad magazine in the 1950s when Mad was a comic book. Not the fold out, but Mad used to be a comic book.
Right.
And they had an issue where the front cover and the back cover looked like one of those composition books with marbling on it.
Yep.
Right.
A little in the corner, there's a note attached that says, designed to smuggle into school. I always remember that. You know what? That's important, that you should be able to smuggle it into school. You don't want big blueprints that are going to.
Right.
So I said, Margaret, I can do 4 of these pages that fold out. I think I only had a couple of weeks. And but they have to be attached to the book. They can't be separate pages. They got to fold out from the book.
Right.
And Margaret was just the best, and she figured out a way to do it.
Got me looking at it now.
That was the way. That is the way to go. Because I'm telling you, if they were separate, half of the people who bought them wouldn't know where page 3 was, or
right.
You know what I mean? They did a beautiful job. Yeah. I had a lot of fun doing that. Well, the fun came from having people at Simon & Schuster who really believed in you.
Yeah.
Margaret was a big Star Trek fan, and she knew who we were before she started working there. So she took everything we said really serious, which is what happened on Picard. When we started working on Picard, and Terry, I just remember Dave Bless saying, oh, you're not going to believe who the showrunner is. And I'm like, who? And he says, Terry Matalis. I'm like, who?
He's your guy.
It was just going to be a bunch of friends having fun,
Yeah, right.
Because it can be hellish.
Yeah, I can imagine with all those hours.
You or even know what you did before, But it was the first time I worked on a show where the production designer and the producer was more concerned about whether I was happy. Well, Doug, are you happy with it? Is that what you think it should be? And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I mean, we had that with Herman, but Rick Berman was in charge, and he would he made most of the decisions.
Mhm.
With Terry and Dave, they felt secure that I was involved with it. That made them feel secure. Not not like they had to check everything I was doing. I mean, they all had notes, of course. Terry might have a feeling he's going for. He definitely did have a feeling he wanted the ships to push a little more towards motion picture.
Yeah.
Um, you
Right.
know, uh, but I remember the first ship that we did that was originally going to be the hero ship that takes them all the way through the show, not the Titan,
Yeah.
was the Stargazer.
Yep.
And we spent more time on that Stargazer than any of the other ships. And then they decided that it wasn't going to be the Stargazer. And he wanted
Yeah.
a ship that pushed a little more towards the motion picture ship. And he saw something that Bill Krause had done. He wanted to adapt that. And
Yep.
it's a fine design, but to me, it's a mid range starship.
Yeah.
It's not a big flagship, cutting edge, where we're all going, ship.
Right.
So I don't agree with that part of it, but dramatically, I get the idea of the ship that all our heroes are on needs to look like it could get hurt.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And if
That's
it
fair.
was the Stargazer, which is very muscular with four nacelles, you would expect it to do some ass kicking back.
Yeah.
And then
You know,
some, yeah.
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 So dramatically, I get it. I totally get it. Whether it should have been changed to Enterprise at the end, uh, I don't know about that. I've always thought I love the idea of the Enterprise being a ship that's beyond. It's like next generation thinking. The
Right.
difference between the original series ship and the Enterprise D, a quantum leap forward.
Right.
That's what I was doing with the J.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be
Right.
a quantum leap beyond everything
Right.
else. I wanted to have that same effect, and
Yeah.
it
This is
does. And
this is the flagship that has all the top of the line
yeah,
technology.
I,
Yeah.
I knew that I had succeeded when I had people saying, "Why, that's ridiculous. Why, those nacelle struts are so spindly. They'd be knocked off like a soap bubble." I'm like, yes, I did it.
I'm going
Because
for it.
when we had the Federation Trading Post and people would come in who weren't particularly into the show and there'd be pictures of the Enterprise, they would tell me what a dumb idea. I mean, look at those, the pylons, the struts to the engines. They would never stand up to that kind of stress. And that's how you know you've done something futuristic. You've
Yep.
got to
Right.
go beyond where they think it's dumb. Every super futuristic thing has all been treated like ridiculous, absurd.
Wasn't it
When
Asimov that
I heard
said like any sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic to those who don't
yeah,
Right.
understand it?
it needs to
Yeah.
look like magic. And if people are saying that's not possible, that means you've done it. You've done
Done
it.
it. You've arrived.
Yes.
That's awesome.
You
That's
know,
awesome. Doug, oh my God, we could talk for another hour. This is totally awesome. But I want to hear all about the project that you're working on because it sounds absolutely tremendous. Just school us. Tell us about your Kickstarter.
well, it started, I lost the love of my life, and I'm fortunate to have another love of my life
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
life now.
Sorry for your loss.
When I lost her, Dorothy, 32 years, I felt like I had to write. I had a lot of funny stories, I thought, and I do like to write. And I've gotten a lot of people on my Facebook page. And when I had the Drex files,
Yep.
people enjoyed the way I wrote and talked about things. So I felt like I wanted to write down as many funny stories as I could. Not my whole life, but enough of my childhood so that you know where I'm coming from. And I had written a memoir, which it should be coming out late spring from Jacobs and Brown, who did Mark Cushman's books, The Voyages, the three big books on. And I had other offers, but you know what? I looked at the books that they did and I could see that genre was important to them, so I decided to go with them. Anyway, there's a diner in Burbank called the Talleyrand where a lot of show business people go to. And I went there to have lunch with Ricardo Delgado, who was an illustrator on Deep Space Nine and one of my dear friends. And we're heading out, and some guy stops us and goes, "Doug Drexler?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he was a big fan. And just like Dave Bless, I didn't know that he worked in the business or what he did or anything. And he contacted me a few weeks later and said he'd like to do a documentary because my career is kind of eclectic. That's what makes it kind of interesting that I've
Totally.
gone through so many different things that are diverse, different from one another. It makes it really kind of extra interesting. But when I said, well, it just so happens I have a draft of my memoir. That's a blueprint, and it turned out we liked each other, Jason Smith. And so he wanted to do this thing. And I found out that, he'd been doing behind the scenes stuff for like the CW and the Vampire Diaries, and he knows how to do it. And so we started shooting some stuff to begin with. And we started up a Kickstarter, which I think it's a modest amount of money we're trying to get. It's like 165,000. We're literally halfway there in 1 week. Now, of course, things taper off as you go on. So we need people to go, and I don't care if it's 25 cents. I mean, everything is going to help. And, most of these documentaries, like if you do a Voyager documentary or the Deep Space Nine, What We Left Behind,
Mm-hmm.
Ira Bear and all, but these documentaries tend to end up being about the writers and the actors. They barely touch on the people who literally are have their sleeves rolled up and are building the stuff. And, uh, we were interviewed quite a bit for the Voyager documentary and Deep Space Nine. And it's like, did I get like 5 seconds?
A lot of it ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Don't we know everything about the actors?
You're right.
Not to take anything away from them, but there's a whole other. When I was a kid and I was reading the making of Star Trek, and I realized that beyond the perimeter of the frame of the TV, there was this whole other universe that was in many ways much crazier and wilder and
Right.
than the show.
Yep.
And that stuff always fascinated the hell out of me. And I just feel like, I call the memoir Trek Star. It's a play on Track Star,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also a way of having your title literally be Star Trek.
Right.
But it's reversed.
Palisade hybrid versus hybrid. Exactly. With the Palisade hybrid, you can get all this.
Go away.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what that was.
The computers are taking over.
Yeah, believe me, they are. We don't have much time, guys.
Oh boy. We better get this. We better get this out, and so we can see your Kickstarter before it's all over.
So anyway, the Kickstarter's going. Please, everybody.
Absolutely.
We need to make. I know we did a great first week, but it does drop off quite a bit, and the more people that know about it, or because it's the only way it's going to get done. And the thing that I love about this is that I could see Trek Star becoming a series.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the next one we do is about the Okudas.
That'd be
Right.
great.
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
Maybe it's Mike and
Be
Denise.
Be fascinating.
Then we have one with Herman Zimmerman, that really goes under the hood.
Yeah,
Really
that's
are going
awesome.
under the hood.
Well, we will have that in our show notes when we publish this. But I'm going to wrap this up, Doug. This has been absolutely incredible. In addition to the Kickstarter, which I'll post a link here so people can jump on over that. How do people find you out there on social media? How do they get in touch, or how do they see your stuff?
I'm mostly on Facebook, but I have
Sure.
started an Instagram
Okay.
just recently to help promote this. But I post. I used to have a blog called the Drex Files,
Right.
and really the Facebook page is that another form of it. I look me up on Facebook. Go to the the Drex Files Kickstarter page. There's a lot of information there and stuff to look at. And I know that Jason's going to be posting. We've been doing little videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. And I'll get that in a second here and make sure it's in the show notes. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up, Doug. It's been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for hanging in there with us and educating. We could talk to you for another 2 hours.
That's the thing. When you run into people who love this stuff, it just like I posted on my Facebook page, Brian Volk Weiss.
Oh, he was one of my big interviews I had earlier this year. What a nice guy.
He is amazing. And he's so excited about this and wants to help in any way he can. And I was just over there. We shot some video, and you meet someone like that who it's like you've known them your whole life. We're
I
just
will
like
drop.
a couple of kids.
I'll drop him a note after we get off here and let him know that you were singing his praises. Because
Yeah,
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 what a great guy.
please do.
We're hoping to have him back on the Star Trek podcast that Peter and I do, because we're going to start talking the center seat, and that was his long series he
It's
did for the
amazing.
55th.
It's one of the best Star Trek documentaries of all time. And I told him the ship's episode. I said that really touched his heart that I love that so much. I show that to if I want someone to kind of know where my brain is, I'll show that
Yeah.
episode to them.
I'm looking forward to watching it, and we'll make sure we would love to have you listen to our show and give some thoughts. But anyway, I will wrap it up. Thank
Oh,
you
how
so
about
much.
Patreon?
We'll be in touch.
Parrot.
Patrons, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel and you'd like to see more, pop on over to patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. You get all of our content early, and so on and so forth. Our guest has been Doug Drexler. Doug, we appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.